everyone. I'm Adam Brown, and this is Shell Point Today for the weekend of August 15th, 16th, and 17th. On today's show, we'll finish up our week-long retrospective on Hurricane Charley, the big storm of 2004. We'll also hear from Bev Chandley about an overnight trip to Mount Dora. But first, a few announcements. If a shopping outing sounds like just the thing for this weekend, you may want to join the group going to the Coconut Point Mall on Saturday. They will also be visiting the Silks by Mew store. Court pickups start at 9:15 with return at approximately 3 p.m. The cost is $8 plus lunch on your own. See page 22 of your August Shell Point Life magazine for more details. On Monday, you can enjoy an afternoon concert with the soothing sounds of the tone chimes. The variety of tunes and sing-along songs that will be performed will have you humming long after the show is over. Join your friends and neighbors and fill your ears with the delicate sounds we all love to hear. The Tone Chimes, Monday at 3:15 p.m. in the Social Center on the island. Also, looking ahead to next week, as you make your dining plans, keep in mind that the Crystal Dining Room will be closed on Tuesday and Wednesday. It will also be closed Tuesday and Wednesday of the following week. Bev Chandley is our resort services hostess with the mostest for Shell Point trips near and far. Between Bev and our intrepid band of Shell Point travelers, ideas for new trips keep springing up, and Bev is game to make them happen for you. The latest outing idea is for an overnight run up to Mount Dora, famous for being the only hilly place in Florida. There's a lot to be enjoyed in Mount Dora. Bev is here to tell us all about it.
Hi everybody, and it's an exciting time here at Shell Point because it's once again time to register for your Academy classes, and within those classes we have our Academy on the Go trips. My name is Bev Chandley, and part of my responsibilities here at Shell Point are to plan these activities, these on the go field trips for you, and I'm here today to talk to you about the overnight trip that we're offering this fall through Trendy Tours, going up to Mount Dora and beyond. It's Lakes County time to explore. So get ready to listen up for a few minutes and we'll show you some pretty pictures of what we're going to encounter on the trip, and we hope that you'll sign up to join us. We only have until the 28th of August for signing up for this trip, so you'll want to get right on the bandwagon if you feel like you want to come with us. We're going to take off, and we usually split these Academy on the Go overnight trips into 4 separate field trips. And the first stop along the way is a trip to the Harry Lou Gardens. It's just outside of Orlando, and it's said to be fabulous. It's owned by the state, and it was donated back, I believe, in 1956. But it's supposed to be spectacular, so that's our first stop along the way on our voyage up to Mount Dora. Once we finish up at the gardens, we'll also tour the mansion there. We will head to Mount Dora itself, which is a historic little town. It's nestled in the hill country. Yes, Florida does have hill country. And it's quite charming, and we're going to stay at the most historic thing in town, which is the Lakeside Inn. It's kind of like a mini Grand Hotel for you Mackinac Island people that have been there and enjoyed Mackinac Island. It's kind of like the Grand Hotel, but on a much, much lesser scale. And so we'll be staying at the Lakeside Historic Inn, and we'll be treated to a small walking tour of the town while we're there. We'll have dinner at the Lakeside Inn that night before retiring for bed. We're going to start the morning activities with breakfast at the Lakeside Inn, and afterwards we're going to go to Premier Boat Tour Company, and we're going to do the Mount Dora Canal Tour. Now, these canals are pretty familiar to us in some way we might not even realize. This is where Johnny Weissmuller did all those Tarzan movies. And it's always fun to think about Tarzan, Jane, and Boy, and of course that little chimpanzee they always had as a pet. As we go through these canals, we should bring back some fond memories. Now, so bone up on that Johnny Weissmuller call, because we might just have a contest to see who does it best. We'll have a nice lunch in Mount Dora before we head back down toward the south and Shell Point. But along the way, we're going to take in another classic Florida roadside attraction. We're going to go through Claremont, where we'll find the Citrus Tower, which is a huge tall tower. We can take an elevator up and we can look out all over 8 different counties in Florida. And I'm not sure how far we'll get to see the day we go, but let's hope for clear skies and an 8-county view. After we leave the Citrus Tower, we're going to head back to Shell Point and get you back here for dinner. And hopefully the trip will be wonderful, successful, a lot of fun, and educational as well. So think about it for a few minutes, but don't hesitate to sign up for this wonderful overnight Fall Academy on the Go trip because they're only limited to 45 spaces. Just call either service desk or me directly at 454-2239. Thank you.
Today is the first day for sign up for this trip, so be sure to get your name on the list at either service desk while there is still room. Coming up, we'll finish up our week-long retrospective on Hurricane Charley, the big storm of 2004. But before we do that, let's cover all of this weekend's happenings, menus, and church news.
Welcome to the weekend edition of the Happening segment of Shell Point TV. I'm Bev Chandley, and this is Jill Alderink, and we're going to tell you what's going on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We're going to start out Friday morning at 8:15 with Stamp Ministry in the Stamp Room on the Island. 8:30 to 11:30, you'll find the marketplace busy in Administration Courtyard. Don't forget to go down there. At 9 o'clock, day respite at the Arbor. Informational presentation will be at the Arbor at the Woodlands. 9 o'clock, we also have round robin doubles tennis at the Woodlands Tennis Courts. 9:30 is the time for canasta and samba. That samba's taken over the world here at Shell Point. That'll be in the game room of the Woodlands. At 10:15, Inquiring Minds will be in the Manatee Room on the island. The Model Yacht Sailing Club will be down at the Woodland Commons Lake at 10:15. Then we're going to jump all the way to 12:30 for the Mixed Progressive Bridge. That game's in the game room of the Woodlands. 1:15, we have Advanced Table Tennis in the Tarpon Room. 1:15, we also have those quilters in the Osprey Room down at the Resident Activities Center. At 1:30, we have our first Vespers of the day at the Community Room of the Arbor. 2 o'clock, we have Bid Euchre in the Sable Room. Our second Vespers at the Community Room of King's Crown is at 2:30, and that's followed by 3:30 Vespers at the Springs. And we're going to round out the evening with 6:45 game night at the Resident Activity Center. So head on down there with some friends and have a good time. Now here's Jill. She's going to tell you what's going on Saturday.
Thanks, Beth. At 8 o'clock, we have pickleball on the pickleball court on the island. Also at 8 o'clock, the men's round robin doubles tennis will be meeting at the tennis courts. At 9:15, they head out for a shopping trip at Coconut Point and Silks by Mew. This is a sign-up event. Court pickup will begin at 9:15 on the island, 9:25 in the Woodlands, and 9:35 at Eagles Preserve. At 9:30, men's doubles and women's doubles tennis will be played at the tennis courts in the Woodlands. At 9:45, duplicate bridge in the Manatee Room on the island. At 1 o'clock, you can play chess in the Library Lounge in the Activity Center on the island. Also at 1:15, Scrabble will be played in the Library Lounge, and table tennis will be played in the Tarpon Room on the island. 3:15, basic line dancing will be happening at the Health Club, and we conclude our Saturday with duplicate bridge in the Manatee Room at 6:30. And here's Bev to tell you what's happening on Sunday.
Well, thanks, Jill. At 9 o'clock and at 11 o'clock, we have the morning worship service in the Grand Cypress Room at the Woodlands. And we have our evening service in the Social Center at 6:15. Well, that's our weekend lineup, and we're sure glad you joined us. We hope you have a wonderful weekend.
Menus for your weekend. In the Crystal Room, the Crystal Platter on Friday is fish cakes with rice pilaf and steamed carrots. The dinner special is the seafood buffet for $15.95, and the soup of the day is lobster bisque. In the Island Cafe for lunch, the special is a turkey Reuben with coleslaw for $7.25. The dinner special is Chef's Choice for $8.25. Dinner specials in the Palm Grill on Friday are lamb chops for $22.95 or steak à poivre for $15.95. On Saturday, the Crystal Room is closed. In the Island Cafe for lunch on Saturday, the special is a chili cheese dog with homemade baked beans for $7.25. The dinner special is roast pork loin with Italian polenta and mixed vegetables for $8.25. In the Palm Grill, the dinner special on Saturday is prime rib for $19.95. On Sunday, the Crystal Room features its Sunday brunch for $17.50. In the Island Cafe for lunch on Sunday, the special is a ham, egg, and cheese croissant with fresh fruit for $7.25. The dinner special is Chef's Choice for $8.25, and the Palm Grill is closed on Sundays. All menus are available 24 hours a day at www.shellpoint.net.
Hi, welcome to Village Church Connections. I'm Andy Hawkins, the senior pastor of the Village Church, and I'm here with David Rambo, who is a dear friend of mine and who is going to be involved in our worship services this coming Sunday. And we're here to talk about the weekend services, but before we do that, David, tell us a little bit about the background of ministry experiences that you've had that will help people get acquainted with you, and I think we'll be excited to hear what you'll be speaking about this coming Sunday.
Well, I'm what they call a PK, preacher's kids, 6 in our family, 3 went into ministry. I had the joy of being a pastor way up in Maine as preparation to going to the Philippines as a missionary, and served there for 5 years and came back and did some study and ended up leading a school in Canada, the Alliance School, the seminary and college in Canada for 9 years. You
also worked in the States in academic work as well, is that correct?
I did at Nyack College as president and also of the seminary, and then after serving the denomination as president, I went back to the seminary to lead for a little while.
Yeah. Well, that's an expansive career. It really is. Everywhere from pastoral ministry to international work to preparing pastors, really in the academic side of things, and leading a denomination with of course, the denomination that you led, the Christian and Missionary Alliance, is one that has brought 9 or 10 times the number of people overseas that we have here, and so that's exciting to see really a global view of ministry, and I think that's wonderful. And you've been one of the people that I've looked up to over the years and followed your career with great interest, and it's my pleasure and an honor to be able to minister to you, I trust, in some fashion. And it's also a privilege to know that in my absence, I'll be on vacation. You'll be filling the pulpit this coming Sunday, and you'll be speaking to our congregation, and that's exciting for me to know. Tell us a little bit about what you're going to be talking about.
Well, that's a long journey because I was trained, as most people were trained, to be expository preachers, 3 points in a poem, they used to say. I've recently, through Asbury and a professor there, got more interested in narrative or story preaching because most of the Bible is narrative. So I've gotten into kind of retelling some of the biblical stories, which are very short. For example, the one that I will be preaching in has, I think, 41 words.
Oh, my.
And about the kingdom of heaven. So it takes a little scrambling to know how to get 25 minutes out of 41 words. But
well, that's exciting. My only regret is that I won't be here to hear it in person, but you can rest assured that we'll look at it on the internet because we're all of our services are, as you are aware, I think that on villagechurchmedia.com people can actually see our services and previous services anytime they want on the internet, in addition to the way we broadcast here at Shell Point. Well, that's exciting. We have a wonderful worship service planned for this coming Sunday. And then on Sunday evening, we have another special opportunity at 6:15 in the Social Center, and that's to hear Janice Quinlan, who's our international worker in residence, who has just arrived in the last week or two to Shell Point, and she'll be here all year, but we're looking forward to getting to know her better this coming Sunday evening. And that service will take place, as I mentioned, at the Social Center at 6:15. You'll be speaking in the morning services. That's 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock. You have to do it twice, brother.
Get it right the second time.
I hope. That's right. So 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock at the Grand Cypress Room in the Woodlands. And so another wonderful opportunity to worship the Lord and to hear God's message through God's servants. And we're looking forward to that.
Well, thanks for the privilege.
That's my pleasure. Thank you for joining us at Village Church Connections, and we hope to see you very soon.
And now we are going to replay the installments of our Hurricane Charley retrospective from earlier this week. We first took a look back at preparations for the storm.
Probably from the early 80s until the late 90s, I was completely responsible for the hurricane plan.
That planning was new to me. I immediately sought out what is our current plan, and it was not well formed.
We were supposed to go to a high school that probably wasn't a mile from the river as the crow flies, so we weren't in an area necessarily safe from flooding.
I could see it as a possible solution, not a good one. We still face the enormity of transport, and especially when you transport your skilled nursing patients, this is no minor item.
Getting the number of folks that we had out of here in whatever transportation we could muster up, getting them out on roads that you could not count on being free to get you anywhere, multiple trips that it would take to get folks somewhere, led us to beefing up the parking garage that we were going to build into the shelter, and that involved enclosing the second floor of it, running it through a wind tunnel test out in Fort Collins, Colorado, a model of it to make sure that we had adequate concrete and steel to meet the worst case storm, that it was high enough to be above what we hope would ever be the worst case storm surge, and spent a lot of money making a parking garage into a very strong, very sturdy, very useful shelter with a generator and a fuel tank, and then all of our supplies and foodstuffs that goes with it.
I have a military background, and I am very familiar with strategic long-range planning and planning for large-scale operations. So I was pretty impressed when they came up with the hurricane plan, but for the first 4 years I was here, it was a matter of review.
It was year after year you would do the work you needed to do to update the plan, make sure we had the supplies, the equipment was here, the equipment worked, and it was very gratifying when you never needed any of it.
My mother moved here, and when she moved in to Shell Point, she bought storm insurance or hurricane insurance, and I said, "Mom, they've never had a hurricane at Shell Point. I've been, associated 30 years. They've never had a hurricane there. You don't need it. Besides that, you're on the second floor of Cameo. What would you need that for?"
I moved into Periwinkle on a Friday in I guess it was July. And the next Friday was the day Hurricane Charley came through.
People had said, the last time it was here was 1960, and it probably won't ever come back again, but Charley surprised us.
They started out saying, it's just a blob out in the west, and then the blob's a little bigger, and then the first thing you know, the blob's knocking on our door.
The hurricane plan is a phased plan. So as soon as there's a threat that may be as much as 10 days to a week out, we're thinking about it.
We need to be in a position to make a decision probably 48 hours in advance of the arrival of the fringe of the storm.
And I recall vividly, must have been going on midnight, that we made the decision to set up the shelter. The storm was likely coming on Friday.
It was frightening to make a decision, but comforting to know that we had a reasonable option, and we recognized what it could or would do to our residents. but there was a time I had to make a decision as to whether or not we would take the chance of staying independent, or that we would make the move, and we have to live with those consequences. And we elected, when we got the forecast that seemed to put us in the high percentage of possible hit, to make the move and take action, and then deal with it the best we could.
All the preparation for supplies and stocks, cleaning the hurricane shelter, notifying the residents, get your hurricane kits together.
The residents' council and getting all their folks ready and getting their kits down where they needed to be so that we could pick them up.
You better get ready to go, because I was certain we would be evacuated into the shelter.
I've decided I'm going to stay to go to the shelter if we have to. So my mind is making sure I have things ready, getting things together.
I was terribly excited. I'm going to go through my first real hurricane. I was a court rep then. I was very, very busy getting prepared to go over there, and it's just fantastic how well organized it was, considering that Shell Point had never gone through this before.
I remember racing out of the meeting when the decision was made, and we started setting up cots to begin for the arrival of the pavilion patients who used those cots at the time.
We don't use the traditional hurricane kit in the pavilion, but we do plan for all of the equipment and supply needs that need to travel right along with the residents. So we prepared the carts that carry all of our charts and med carts and treatment carts down the street and up into the shelter.
It was quite an undertaking, and then they had to figure out how they were going to get the people from the pavilion to the parking garage, and most of it was pushing them by wheelchairs hand over hand.
Our son David and his wife and their daughter, whom they were taking on their way to college, were here, and there was a call for volunteers along at night, and David and Franny and Rebecca went over and worked all night, most of it in the rain, preparing the people from pavilion to go to the hurricane shelter. Along the way, David was speaking to a lady. He was pushing a lady and was talking to her in German.
And we had a group of folks from the church, is really who it was, that pushed every one of those people up the ramp.
Some of us were better at pushing the wheelchairs up the ramp. And suddenly we were sort of singled out and said, you stay here, and this is your job now. And so we would get a running start. I really feel badly for those residents, but we would just move those wheelchairs up the ramp and get them, people situated inside, and then go back down, grab another person and wheel them up the ramp. And I don't know how many times we actually did that, but a lot of residents had the ride of their life going up that ramp, you know.
There was an abundance of help on the front end, and so I ended up working with helping people off buses and getting their things off buses and kind of encouraging them a little bit.
It was, again, such a new experience, and to have the idea of something that strong and that powerful coming, and then to watch the way that we addressed it and planned for it and set up the hurricane shelter, all those things for me I think were a great introduction to Shell Point and the manner in which we do things methodically.
Considering that we had never done it, things went extremely well. So many people really stepped up to the plate and took things over that they weren't necessarily assigned to do prior to the storm. They just happened to be the ones that were there.
The thing that meant the most to me as an individual, having gone through Andrew, was that I had a place to go, a place that was safe.
Shell Point had really made wonderful accommodation for us, and I really wasn't concerned about it because it seemed to me that under the worst circumstances we were going to be fine.
We embraced it fully, that we were going to make it the best experience we could. We had a plan. We were all committed to it, and it was the esprit de corps that I respect so deeply among our staff, who are concerned about the well-being of these residents, who said, we're going to do whatever it takes, and we're going to make it the best experience we possibly can.
The first and so far only time the Shell Point Hurricane Shelter has been called into use, besides its daily duty parking employee cars, was for Hurricane Charley. We heard some stories about what it was like to camp out in the shelter.
But we got to the shelter at 10 a.m. When we got there, our kit was right there. Our kit was on our cot.
And it was just nothing but chairs and cots all around. One man said as he came in, "I think this cruise was overbooked."
Initially, all the shutters were actually up. They weren't down. And we were watching outside. We were looking at the conditions changing pretty rapidly outside and anticipating what was going to happen.
The big windows were open and we had a breeze through, we could have some fresh air and all through there.
Then they began to put down all the windows because the winds were building.
And then they dropped the shutters down and sealed us in. And literally, it was as though, I think for me, the whole atmosphere changed. And people were, there was actually a wonderful spirit about the people that were, it was a camaraderie. We were in this together.
I was really impressed by how calm everybody was and just so trusting, And I was pretty trusting myself. I know Bob Southern, and he said this is a strong, steady shelter. It's going to be okay.
The thing that meant the most to me as an individual having gone through Andrew was that I had a place to go, a place that was safe. And I knew we would have food there. I knew we would be housed safely. I knew we would have water there. We would have umpteen porta potties, which are really important when you're locked up in a shelter.
There were even porta wash places where you could wash your hands and your face, brush your teeth. I was amazed.
The big thing was, the heat.
I knew it was going to be really, really hot.
It was uncomfortable.
It was hot.
The shelter was active and loud and hot.
Some would be very polite, but I would say, "How are you doing?" And some would say, "I do not like this at all." And I had to think, well, I can appreciate that.
It wasn't like the Ritz-Carlton, but we were well cared for. They had snacks.
Oh yeah, the food was great.
The meals were good. They constantly had snacks and water.
We didn't have steak and fried potatoes.
We're bringing out more food, and people were coming to get the food and taking it back to their friends and neighbors.
And we're supposed to take our turns going over there, but every now and then somebody at the Oak Mountain was very hungry, and I said, well, let's see what we can do. So I'd go over there and said, oh, sure, we'll bring some over to you, even if it's not their turn. I mean, everybody was so cooperative, it was amazing.
At 12 noon, we had lunch. At 3 o'clock, we had a hurricane. At 6 o'clock, we had supper. And at 10 o'clock, we went back home.
Some people were playing cards, some were just quietly reading.
I had a book. My seat was under a light and I enjoyed reading, so I kept busy.
I had taken as an activities person lots of games and lots of cards and lots of things that I thought people would, be wanting to do, crossword puzzles. They didn't want to do any of that stuff. All they wanted to do was listen to the forecast of where it was coming down.
Just a noise level of normal conversation inside that small and kind of enclosed area was such that you actually didn't hear the rain outside.
I had used the bullhorn, went through the entire shelter, making about 8 different stops, as I recall, giving this message out to all the folks who were there. And you had to make multiple stops because people couldn't hear you very far away, even with the bullhorn. So I finished telling everybody in the shelter that it was a Category 1 and that it was going to go up the coast and probably not a big deal for us. And I ended up by the walkway that comes over from the maintenance building. And I turned around and Pam Gehring was coming out of that walkway. And her eyes were as big as saucers. And she's yelling at me that the storm is now a Category 4. It's turned direction and it's coming right at us. So I just finished telling everybody in the shelter that it was a 1 and it wasn't a big deal, and now it was a very big deal.
That's when I started enjoying the hurricane. I looked out the little peephole and saw a piece of the roof of the church fly by.
The wind came primarily out of the south, blowing north. My window faces west, so I could open up my shutters, and I was, of course, looking parallel to the direction of the wind. So we were able to observe at the height of the storm what was happening with the trees.
The wind just had the trees bending down halfway to the ground. It was quite an experience.
We were entertaining each other and helped each other, with getting up and down off of those low chairs.
People had gone to the drugstore and bought those beach chairs that when you sit down on them, you fall over, and when you lie down on them, you can't get up from them without the help of two strong men.
It was really funny to watch them get out of those things. Some couldn't get out at all. We had to pull them out of there. Some of the chairs folded up around them.
And I must have lifted probably 150 people out of their little low-lying bench or little cot. So you always had something to do. You were just walking around.
I remember just walking around and around and around from court to court to court and talking, and you kind of forgot, that you were in a parking garage shelter.
I just simply walked the shelter, having nothing better to do. Walking was a great outlet to sort of relieve my anxiety or whatever it was, the feelings I had about being caught in this circumstance.
I had a wonderful friend. Her name was Edna Harkless. August 13th happened to be Edna's 80th birthday. One of her daughters was here and had planned a little birthday celebration for her and had a cake. And we all went into the hurricane shelter and we celebrated Edna's birthday, cake and all, in the hurricane shelter. So it was really kind of an interesting, happy experience. And Edna herself, she was just like beside herself. She was so excited that, my goodness, not everybody gets to spend their birthday in a hurricane shelter.
One of the things that I really learned during that time was we all were running on that excess adrenaline, I think. And so people continued to work nonstop.
We were so focused on taking care of people from not only the pavilion but the King's Crown. That was just everybody's focus and keeping them calm and comfortable. And
in the time of crisis, people band together.
I've never been more proud of our residents and our staff for the way they jumped in and cooperated, did what they needed to do, and dealt with what we were faced with. And it was quite an extraordinary experience in that respect.
The absolute level of cooperation that we had from the residents. They stayed in place, they took care of business, they stayed as relaxed as they could. We were doing as best we could with beverages, hydration, and food, clean up, words of encouragement. But the exact, the environment in the shelter to me was remarkable for, one, the first time they've ever been in there, and for the amount of hours that they stayed in there.
Sense of support and gratitude by residents that we're so glad for this safety, and it's uncomfortable, but it's okay.
They were wonderfully prepared, absolutely. I can't really fault anything.
At the time, Charley was the 5th most costly hurricane in U.S. history. We got a look at what it was like after the monster had passed.
When the winds finally died down and we opened up the windows and looked out and saw all the damage, all the trees blown down and some of the roof blown off the church, so we could see that much.
The destructiveness of that storm was evident everywhere around us.
Big trees you would never have thought would have come down, they came down.
I have an anemometer installed in my building. The maximum wind speed peaked at 137 miles an hour.
It was just like a war zone out there with all the trees blown down and litter everywhere. It really was a frightening sight to imagine what it would have had to have been to have stayed in the residences without evacuating and not having a shelter at Shell Point.
The doors opened. There was a collective sigh of relief.
First of all, I think everyone really breathed a sigh of relief. And then number two, everyone wanted to get out of there right away.
Everybody wanted to get out of there first. And poor Lynn Snyder, she was trying to control that thing. And she did a great job, but you know, the people just going out there, there's nothing she could do about it.
Number one, to get fresh air. Number two, to see what was going on. And number three, to try to squeeze out if they could. People were anxious to get out and get home.
The end of the time in the shelter was just sort of the beginning of the issues to deal with afterwards.
Near midnight, and of course being dark, they couldn't be sure of what might be blocking the sidewalks and so on.
We had to have car lights turned on so that we could see our way back with these people that we were escorting back.
The strongest memory I have was how dark it was when we came out. We had some flashlights, but this was an area that I was completely familiar with, and yet I was totally disoriented.
I had a hard time getting my key in the lock because I couldn't see.
We looked up in the sky, and there was such a beautiful starry night. And he just, you know, realized that life goes on and tomorrow's going to be a brighter day, because it was just amazing.
To my amazement, Sand Dollar was completely untouched.
Not one drop in our apartment. We came through it really well.
The ice cream had in the freezer had partly melted.
Everything in my freezer. The trash rooms were full.
No water, no refrigeration, no air conditioning, no light, of course.
Our water was not working, but we didn't know that because we're on the second floor, so the people on the 8th floor couldn't flush. But we could flush because we had all the water from 6 floors, 8 floors above us.
Well, we got the water from the swimming pool. Got buckets of the swimming pool and put it in the bathtub.
Future hurricanes after Charlie, both tubs were filled.
All I did was take a shower and fall into bed and sleep till the next morning.
We took cold showers, at least I did. It felt really good to have a shower.
But we had our own bed and we were home, so that made all the difference.
The pastoral staff from Village Church was there picking up the garbage, doing, you know, helpful things like that. And that was, wow, there goes Pastor Nesselrode, there goes Pastor Bartholomew, you know, carrying around one of those big green bags, collecting the leftovers from the lunch meal.
I ended up driving a bus and seeing people to their apartments and that kind of thing.
I remember Mr. Dice was one of the last ones to leave, and he had to be absolutely exhausted, but he was not going to leave until he knew every resident was back safe.
I remember not sleeping for 48 hours, I think it was, from the time it started. And I got home about 4 o'clock in the morning, I believe, and it was pitch black, and I got home to 2 of my windows being blown out of my home and some tile blown off the roof. But I was more interested in just finding a bed to lay down on, and slept for about 4 hours, and then came back and worked for another close to 20 hours, because at that point what we were having to deal with was displaced people out of the mid-rises.
We lost significant chunks of all 3 of those roofs on those buildings. Probably about 100 apartments were affected by water intrusion after the storm.
That put on a whole new set of issues. What do I do now with facilities that didn't have a roof?
I actually was asked to work on sort of a retainer and help get the mid-rises back into shape. And so immediately we found 150 or so units that had suffered damage out of the 210, I think, that are in the 3 buildings.
Ended up putting 3 entirely new roofs on all 3 of the mid-rise buildings.
Shell Point had roofers here at 7 o'clock in the morning following the event, based on the fact that we had the leverage with the staff and we had done the planning.
Between 50 and 60 of the residents had to actually be relocated.
I remember the Aries living in the guest house for a very long time and being extremely patient.
There's an old cash and carry up at Miners Corner, and it was empty. So we rented it, and that became like a staging area. Items from the apartments were stored there in that warehouse, and we would check it about 3 times daily. We air conditioned it. We got everybody back in, I think, on the 62nd day. Everybody was back in their homes, so we were really excited about that.
They were prompt to get right there and dry it up and put the big fans once we had electricity, and we had electricity soon afterwards.
We were among the very first in the community to get electricity restored. I think, we got home about midnight. I think it was perhaps as early as 9 o'clock the next morning when we had our electricity back.
Fortunately, with our relationship and planning with FP&L, we were able to get our systems up and operating quite quickly, and we're operating far, far in advance of anyone else in the greater geographic area.
What about our home? You know, is it still there? Is everything okay?
When I got home after the storm, a lot of trees were down.
I kind of joke around with people. I tell them we lost a tree, but we found it. It was on our roof.
There was no power at home for a while.
So after about 4 or 5 days of that wore pretty thin after a while.
We were working 16, 18-hour days, and you go home and try to get some rest. You couldn't, and I know you, likely as not, you just get up and come back to work because you couldn't sleep anyway.
I wanted a cup of coffee. A cup of hot coffee, and that needed, I wanted some energy, a little caffeine.
I went upstairs, and I had a couple sodas in the refrigerator upstairs in the copier room. And I went up there, and I opened the refrigerator, and the coolness was still in it, even though the power was off. And I pulled out that drink, and I think it was the best drink of soda I've ever had in my life. It was cold, and we were all soaked and hot, and I'll never forget that soda.
Given the destruction at everybody's homes outside, everyone came back to work as quickly as possible to help with their cleanup in every area. It was almost as if you didn't have to tell the majority of the staff what to do. They just knew what to do.
They were pretty exhausted. Some of the CNAs, they worked so hard in there.
We went out door to door and asked people if they could come and help us hydrate the residents in the pavilion.
In a skilled nursing facility, if I had 15 volunteers, I was thrilled. So this was really my first introduction to our 200-plus pavilion auxiliary. Afterwards, to have them come in, I remember them bringing fans from home. I mean, I think we had 30 or 40 fans easily throughout the building. A lot of them came in and helped us hydrate residents, just passing up and down the halls with water and helping the residents drink water. Again, it was whatever it took.
There was so much patience and so much helping, residents helping residents.
So there was a we've survived this together kind of attitude. We can make it. We're okay.
Nobody ever wants to go through anything as traumatic as a hurricane, but when you do and come out the other side, there are stories to tell. Here are a few.
I'm still so impressed by the staff I work with and the things they were doing.
Shell Point knows how to take care of us.
I was so impressed that Shell Point had everything taken care of.
I just felt very safe, and that they had everything just the way it needed to be.
And I thought to myself, this is an example of what a tremendous staff we have at Shell Point. It really came home to me.
Gratitude and the overwhelming thank yous that we received from the residents for how Shell Point employees performed during the storm was tremendous and very gratifying.
There is an intense passion on our part to do the right thing in the right way for our people. It's going to be the first thing that drives us day in and day out.
Knowing that there's a whole team who works together and plans this strategy and reviews it after the episode is passed and makes it better for the next time.
The plan worked. Of course, we had a lot of lessons learned that have been incorporated into each year. And let's keep in mind that the very next year, we prepared the shelter for evacuation with Hurricane Wilma.
The following year, they had another hurricane, as you recall. We're up on the 8th floor of the Oakmont. And I'll tell you, we rode that out, and I said to myself, I'll never do that again if I can help it. It was noisy, windy, and the sliding glass doors started going back and forth about 2 inches. And it felt like you're in a kettle drum up there. I mean, it was scary.
Shell Point administration is right. Don't argue. If you're told to evacuate, go, because you'll be safe there. You won't be cool, but we have more fans now, but you will be well fed, you'll be well cared for, you'll have plenty of water.
It certainly would not have been the thing to do to try to get away.
When people left South Florida in droves during Andrew, it was a stalemate on I-95 going north. The alley was full going west. I mean, there was just no way to get out of the city, nor was there a way back in when it was over. I mean, we had no gasoline. It was very, very difficult. So I was glad to stay here.
It's just amazing how a parking garage is a shelter. I drove up into the top of the garage that had been the hurricane shelter, and I just sat in my car and remembered everything that happened, and I hadn't been up in the top of the garage again. Yeah, a lot happened in the top of a parking garage, and everybody survived.
It was a unique experience that I don't want to have again.
And we got out of it alive and well, a little bit hot, but that was all. So it was a lot to be grateful for.
At the church, we got the idea of having like I don't want to call it a hurricane party, but we had a party for the residents that were displaced. I think they were in the guest house at that time. And we had ice cream sundaes, and we played games, and we did things to try to say, we'll make it through. You know, we'll be able to weather this as well. We survived the storm, and now we'll survive the aftermath.
You see a lot of resiliency, a lot of adaptability in people's lives, and it's really quite remarkable to watch older people go through something like that.
I can't express well enough my gratitude for their understanding and their absolute support. And it was clearly an atmosphere of we're in this together.
It was something that I'm thankful that I was able to be a part of. It interestingly gave me an opportunity to make friends with people that I had not met before.
When you're going to that shelter, you're not going with a group of strangers, people that you can't trust, people you're suspicious of. You're going there with your next door neighbor or friends who live in your same building.
We are so interrelated and so interdependent that when a crisis like that occurs, to be able to depend on each other is everything.
While I pray that we never have to see another hurricane right here again, I'm confident knowing that if we do, we'll be prepared.
For the next evacuation, that we'll be right on time and taking care of business as usual, as we always do at Shell Point.
So I've signed up to go back the next time we have one.
Not that there's going to
No, we're not going to ever have another one, but I'll keep the kit handy and ready.
We also had a few items this week that didn't have anything to do with hurricanes, unless your house blows down and you lose all your furniture, I suppose. Melody Desolé shared with us about the furniture sale going on this month at Shell Point's Community Thrift Store.
Hi Shell Point, I'm Melody Desolé. I'm here at the Community Thrift Store in the Miners Shopping Plaza, and I'm here today not to tell you a story, but to tell you about a big sale that we have going on with all the furniture in the store. Can you imagine this beautiful dinette set in your apartment? With a 25% off sale, we would take over $100 off. You might want to consider this set for your place. Or how about a beautiful sectional couch? Or maybe you're looking for a new coffee table. Or maybe you're looking for something a little bit more unique. And if you can convince your husband that this is the right shade of bubblegum pink, then this could be yours today. Or maybe you're looking to store your beautiful plates that have been passed down through the generations. This would be the place to find something like that. Or maybe you're looking for something to refurbish. This desk is just the piece for that. It's got an excellent shell and great hardware. And with 25% off, it's a great deal. Now, if you're wondering what this unique piece is, so am I. But here's the good news, it's 25% off, so you can make it into whatever you'd like it to be. Now, if you're looking for a conversation piece, maybe these antique chairs would look perfect in your corner. And remember, Shell Point, this sale goes from today until August 23rd. So be sure to head over to your local community thrift store for the biggest furniture sale yet. Thank you for joining me, and we hope to see you out and about.
The stamp room in the Island Tunnel, home of the Stamp Ministry, got a refurbishment this summer. Last week, the volunteers moved back into their renewed space.
We're really thrilled today that we are able to reopen the Stamp Ministry here at Shell Point. We've gone through some modifications, some upgrades, some nice new things that have happened for them, an adjustment in their space, but the Stamp Ministry that has been a benchmark for Shell Point for a long portion of our history, and the service that it provides around the world in its benefits of Christian material for Sunday schools and so on in some of the foreign countries has been all a result of the volunteer activity of our residents and what they do with the stamps that are sent from around the country for processing here for the benefit again of ministries in other countries. So we are just thrilled today to be able to open the stamp room in its renovated stage for the ongoing ministry and the next generation of services that it will provide to the community here at Shell Point and around the world.
Everything in the room is new, except the light fixtures, the stamps that have come in, and the people that work here. Everything else is brand new, and we're thrilled with it looking so clean and nice, and we'd love to have volunteers come.
We appreciate your willingness to work with us as we made this adjustment. Changes always don't come real easy to any of us, but we've made it, and we always consider the benefit of having the Stamp Ministry here as a great way of ministry around the world that comes from people who donate as well as for the people like yourselves who participate. So we thank you for your patience as we've gone through this, and just hope that this will be a nice facilitating room for you to carry on this ministry in a very effective fashion. So thank you, and God bless you as you make a real difference for this community and around the world.
The King's Crown Kitchen served very well for 27 years, but the time finally came for a refurbishment. The Shell Point team accomplished their ambitious goal of completing the project in just 60 days.
Hello, I'm Al Slickers, Director of Hospitality Services here at Shell Point Retirement Community, and today I'd like to introduce you to the newly renovated kitchen at the King's Crown. This kitchen's been under construction for about 8 weeks now, and we're getting ready to open this coming week and look forward to it. Well, this is the new kitchen, recently renovated kitchen at King's Crown. King's Crown Kitchen serves approximately 100 residents 3 times a day, 7 days a week. And we serve approximately 103,000 meals here a year at the King's Crown. The old kitchen served its purpose very well. It lasted for 27 years. And during that 27 years, we produced over 3 million meals out of this kitchen. And we've just recently renovated it to bring it up to date and modernize it, make sure that it's operating efficiently and effectively, and bring it up to the standards and codes of today. As you can see, we've taken everything in here and replaced it. We put new walls in, a new floor, we put new refrigeration, new equipment. We're able to keep the heat out of the kitchen because of the efficiency as well, which again is saving on our electric bill and air conditioning here. We have a new exhaust system here that's much more energy efficient. We can control the temperature of the air coming in and keep the air conditioning under control, and also the amount of hot air that's going out. We get that out of the kitchen. So it's working much more efficiently from an energy management perspective. Also, we've put new equipment in here that will operate much more efficiently. The SEER rating is much higher on this equipment now, so that'll help us with energy management as well. A couple of other things that are interesting here is the floor that we're walking on has a very high coefficient from a slip safety perspective. And this will be a much safer environment for employees to work in. and make sure that we minimize falls, and again, with safety of employees in mind. The other thing that's interesting is our walls. The walls are all FDA approved, and they're easily washed and sanitized, so we can wipe them down and keep them clean. They're non-permeable, so it'll make it much more effective for us to keep the kitchen cleaner and up to health code standards. We do get inspected by the health department once a quarter, and these are the things that they're looking at. These are some of the recommendations they made, and we put that into our plan as well. The generator, it's on a backup generator, and all of our refrigeration is on this backup system. So if we do lose power, we go to a generator, we don't have to worry about food spoilage. So we can run our refrigeration for 3 days without any power from FPL based off of our generator here. And we can also use this kitchen in a situation of emergency or potential disaster. This is also a backup kitchen. The other thing we did here, which was unique, is in our equipment, we now have electric and gas. We had that before, but we divided our production capability up, so if we do lose one utility, we have a backup system here to make sure that we can run at least 50% of our equipment either on gas or electric. So that's a nice enhancement as well. Make sure that we're able to provide meals, again, 3 times a day, 7 days a week for residents. One of the things that's unique here is we have a new chase system that's put into place, and you can see the utilities coming out of the ground, the gas and electric. All of that is now distributed through one panel right here, so that electricians can get to it from one side, the plumber can get to it from one side. We have quick disconnects on the gas, so it's easily maintained. We can roll the equipment out to clean underneath of it, to work on it, to maintain it. So it helps us keep everything neat and organized here. So overall, you can see that we've really modernized here. We've brought everything up to current standards, current regulations here at Shell Point, and we look forward to serving the residents of Kings Crown for many, many years to come with this kitchen.
Well, that's it for this week on Shell Point Today. We're glad you joined us for our program. Tune in again next week for more news and stories from around your community. Until then, this is Shell Point Today for the weekend of August 15th, 16th, and 17th. I'm Adam Brown, and for all of us here at Shell Point TV, we hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday.